Check podcasts.
Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Chamber Chats, being done as always from the podcasting studios of one of our chamber champions, Check Television. I would like to begin by acknowledging that I live and work in the ancestral unceded territories of the Lekwungen-speaking nations, the Songhees and the Esquimalt. It is an honor and a privilege to live and work alongside them every single day. And Chamber Chats are made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, and by C-SPAN Victoria Shipyards. So, as we get back to travel and things, you're probably planning at some point to go to Seattle, or you're going to drive to Seattle or go somewhere else, and you'll get on the Clipper or the Coho to make that happen. What would happen if that went away? What would be the impact on this region if those ferries were no longer there? In other words, if we were not a border crossing point. We're going to talk about that today and about the upgrade to the Belleville Terminal, which is where those vessels come and go from, and to, for that matter. With us today, honored to have the Honorable Rob Fleming, Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure in the Government of British Columbia. Minister, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be with you, Bruce.
So, Rob, the Belleville Terminal has been pending, sort of percolating for a long time. How does it come to be now that we're going to act on it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I go back in my political history with this project to 1999 when I was on Victoria City Council, and we rezoned it a couple of years earlier. Transport Canada had divested the entire property to the province of BC, and then Minister Andrew Petter worked with the City of Victoria and business organizations like the Chamber to kind of envision what the renewal of that international ferry terminal should look like. And then not a lot happened for 16 years. Government changed. We have, sought with some urgency to meet the somewhat existential threat of laws and treaties to which Canada is a signatory of around newer, higher border security standards between our two countries. And we have always enjoyed a very robust presence of U.S. Custom and Border Services on the Canadian side here in Victoria, full officer complement, which not only benefits the two ferry carriers that you mentioned at Belleville, but also Washington State Ferries and our airport, and also could be an important part of our cruise industry as well. So we need to do this for two reasons. One is to make sure that we're compliant, that we have a future, that we enjoy a secure and easy border crossing between this wonderful destination that a lot of American international visitors are keen to see, and have that link both to great destinations like Port Angeles and Seattle. But even if we didn't have to upgrade to the new border security requirements, this is an economic opportunity to take something that contributes a lot and has been a mainstay of our tourism economy and make it even better. So this is about the growth of a really good piece of infrastructure, a facility, a gateway to our inner harbor in our region and all of Vancouver Island, and a chance to make it better. These don't come around very often, so that's why we're so pleased to be involved with business organizations and in a full public engagement right now.
Yeah, and public engagement is why we're talking today. We want all of you that are listening and watching this right now to engage on this website. It's going to be on your screen, and that will tell you where you can go to be a part of the consultation process in making this change happen. But, Minister, let's be very clear on this. That facility, despite it being outdated, unsafe, and kind of unsightly, it's a factor that the U.S. border people have said, if you don't improve it, we're gone. We're going to leave.
Yes, that has been a directive from them, and we have, I think, gained a lot of trust with them recently because the provincial government during COVID has been quietly and busily working behind the scenes. Government has created a concept plan. We're moving forward to a full business case, which is why we're doing the public engagement. So they're seeing signs, knowing how our political and legislative process and our funding project process works for infrastructure, good signs of progress. And of course, this treaty I referred to in terms of this agreement between Canada and the United States around border security has been completed, I think, entirely on all land border crossings to the United States. Most of our major international airports have been are compliant on this, and of course, any rail connections. So it was really the international ferry, which is only a feature on the Atlantic coast and here, that are to be done last. And but time is not forgiving here. We do have a window to get this completed, but I think they're very happy with the signs of progress they're seeing.
This website that we've been referring to, by the way, is active until October 20th, which is where you can go and put your input into that. So we're going to cover a bunch of things here, but we talk in terms of saying it's going to be a whole lot more difficult for us to get to a Seahawks game or a Mariners game or a Kraken game or a Huskies game or do whatever you want to do in Washington. It's going to be more difficult for people to drive to sun destinations in Arizona and California. But conversely to that, Minister, every time Coho and Clipper pull up here, they're bringing Americans, well, they're bringing some Canadians home, but they're bringing Americans that are going to spend their money here.
That's right.
And if we lose that, that's got huge economic impact, doesn't it?
It certainly does. I think the 2019, this is kind of the last normal pre-pandemic year that we've measured, about $175 million of direct spending, about $250 million of induced GDP activity on top of that. For the hotel sector, it's about 220,000 room nights a year, about 16,000 pre-booked Vancouver Island vacation packages are a direct result of the Clipper and Coho connections that we enjoy. And so that's our base case. As I was trying to say earlier, we've had a great thing for many, many years. I guess it really goes back to 1924 in terms of the marine connection. But certainly since the 1990s, we've had a very good thing, a growing connection and value add to the tourism sector. I think about 20% of international visitors to Vancouver Island enter through the Belleville International Ferry Terminal. So it complements YYJ Airport very nicely in terms of how people get here and spend their money and create jobs and all of that. But as I say, it's an opportunity to not just rebuild what we've had, but to take it in an entirely new direction. A modern, clean, and efficient terminal is going to provide so many incredible benefits.
Yeah, so we talked about the security, the safety element to it. An environmental piece is a big part of this too. We're going to talk about that next. Our guest on Chamber Chats today is the Honourable Rob Fleming. He is BC's Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure. So, Minister, in a time when that whole thing was built, consideration for the environment just wasn't even in nobody thought about that. It wasn't there. So let's talk a little bit about this process, not only in the deconstruction, but then the build. How will this be an environmentally sound project?
Well, you're absolutely right. When people look at pictures decades past of what the Inner Harbor looked like, and they only have to go back to like the 1970s, it was full of log booms. There were paint factories and manufacturing facilities, and the foreshore of the Inner Harbor was left in quite a polluted state. So as the harbor has changed uses, redeveloped, or even continued uses, and I think of the Point Hope Maritime Shipyard, environmental remediation is part of any redevelopment that we're proposing in this case at the Belleville International Ferry Terminal site. So there will be a lot of environmental benefits on how it's built, any contamination that can be remediated on site. Creosote piles will be pulled out and will no longer be part of the marine environment. Those will be modernized. And we also have to account for the changes in the environment, sea level rise, for example, and those wharves need to be raised to a different height so they will last decades and decades into the future and account for climate adaptation. So the building as well will have very low carbon footprints. It will be built to the highest energy efficient standards. It'll use some good environmental components like mass timber, which is an industry we're trying to grow on Vancouver Island, which will be not only architecturally stunning, but it will reuse material that would otherwise be rotting on the forest floor as waste wood and byproducts. So there'll be a lot of environmental benefits. And again, that I know that's important to the public in Greater Victoria, and that's certainly one of the things we want to hear about from people during this engagement.
We also have to realize that at the time when all of this was done, there would have been no consideration or evaluation of any presence Songhees Nation may have had, either artifacts or historic remnants from their culture being there too. How's that going to be managed?
Well, reconciliation is really important to us. And of course, the inclusion of the Songhees and Esquimalt in lots of areas of governance on how our harbor works today in the contemporary modern context, like the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority, for example, is key to how we proceed. So we'll be moving forward with the collaborative model, and on a lot of our infrastructure projects that the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure is building, we look for public art features. We look for a reflection of the original Indigenous communities that have inhabited this area for thousands of years, for millennium, and we want to solicit their ideas, their partnership, and provide economic opportunities to First Nations peoples, the Lekwungen people that were here long before any of us were.
We're going to keep the website up for you, too. Just a reminder that we're having this conversation with the minister because they want your input into what this is going to look like and what's going to happen and the timeline and all the rest of it. But speaking of what it's going to look like, Minister, there are some drawings and renderings. So let's kind of talk about that just a little bit. What's the concept behind the design?
First concept is site efficiency. So instead of having several clusters of inefficient buildings, and when we're talking about the Clipper, we're literally talking about ATCO trailers that were put up temporarily for the Commonwealth Games way back in 1994 and have no proper clearance or office space or passenger waiting facilities there, no amenities. So we're going to take all these basic outdated buildings and combine them for joint efficiency. We will have both border agencies, CBSA and the Americans, sharing facilities where possible. And then there'll be lots of better circulation through the site. It'll be weather protected, so people don't have to get soaked as foot passengers getting onto either the Coho or the Clipper. And it'll be much better for loading vehicle traffic, and it'll be a secure site. So those border security measures that we've agreed to as a country with our American friends will be met, and the site will be secure so that you'll be able to just drive off if you're going to Port Angeles, having cleared U.S. customs and been admitted to their country from here, or as a foot passenger on the Clipper straight into Seattle. So the convenience and the time savings will make the journey that much better.
It can be seen as a pretty busy area, too. I mean, as vehicles come and go. So we have to take into consideration that there will be cars, trucks, going to be motorhomes, there's going to be motorcycles, there'll be cyclists. So that whole traffic pattern thing has to be designed in such a way that it's going to be efficient. But also, Minister, we're going to have tour buses coming and going, and maybe taxi cabs, and maybe someday there might even be Uber or ride-hailing vehicles. So that's pretty crucial, right? The whole traffic pattern is crucial to this.
It is, and the city of Victoria, I should mention, is a really good partner on this, and they have had some money tucked away in their plans to improve and pedestrianize the plaza, make Belleville actually an attractive street and part of the new gateway with the terminal, which will allow us also where we need to reconfigure some of the access egress for the traffic that you mentioned, to have a friendly pedestrian and multimodal cycling, for example, entrances to both where tickets and custom services are provided. So, yeah, it gives us an opportunity to do a fresh look of a consolidated site with an efficient layout and building, and to consider everything all at once.
So when this is all taking place in what is a pretty high traffic area, and it's like a block from where you're sitting if you're at the ledge right now. I ride my bike through there all the time. All of us go through there for various reasons at various times. What's that going to look like as a construction zone? What are the measures being put in place to make sure that we can traverse through there with a minimum amount of disruption?
Yeah, so we're going to have to phase this project. Some of the dock upgrade work has been done on the Coho site, which is good. The part that needs to be upgraded is down towards the Clipper. If some of the people listening to this podcast can envision the site, we're going to have to relocate Clipper to the CP steamship terminal building, the
right.
Heritage building, which some years ago was seismically upgraded, and use some of the unused floor space there to put those services there temporarily, and then we'll construct the building and the wharfs as sort of phase two. So suffice it to say, we will advise the public about the construction inconvenience that we are going to have to live through to get a good project. We hope to be in construction by 2023 and have the project completed by 2027. So there'll be a few tourism seasons there for sure, where we'll have to watch the progress before the final completion of a brand new, beautiful international ferry terminal and border crossing.
Yeah, short-term pain, long-term gain.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so there's more to what these plans include than just simply a ferry terminal. I want to talk about that next. Our Chamber Chat guest today is the Honourable Rob Fleming, Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure in British Columbia. Minister, we're talking about the actual ferry coming and going, the terminal part of it. But as with everything now, these are going to be multi-purpose, multi-use. There's going to be other elements aside from that included. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, there's an opportunity here to have not only services and amenities for passengers inside the secure part of the ferry terminal, but also some public-facing retail, perhaps duty-free shops and other amenities that currently don't exist and that you would typically expect from a prominent border crossing. And in this case, they bring in 680,000 trips per year. So there's quite a flow there, and a very busy peak season, as you know, in summer, but a year-round service. So those are all the kinds of things, again, we want to engage the public on. We want to have something that's architecturally stunning, that works well, that has both public, i.e. non-passenger services and purposes, as well as performing the primary function, which is to have a secure border crossing that works for both of our exemplary tenants, both Coho and Clipper, it has to be said, are extremely well-run businesses whose future business planning is very much wanting to be involved in a renewed international ferry terminal. They want to be in Victoria forever, and their investment plans are in favor of that. So they're excited to be part of this renewal after, I think, probably a lot of starts and stops and discussions for many, many years. Some of them, like Ryan Burles at Coho, will have an extensive history on these kinds of discussions. And they made some progress over the years, but now it's time to do the big job of renewing that site.
We want them here forever too. At the Chamber, we've created a committee called the IDEA Committee, which is Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, Advancement Committee. One of the elements within that are the concerns of people who identify with various disabilities, whatever that might be. So we speak very often about the need to retrofit buildings, but at the same time, we need to work on the idea that all buildings need to be built so that they're barrier-free from the very beginning. They're accessible for everybody. What does that look like in this plan?
Well, I think that looks like where the building code standards have changed to account for accessibility. So there will be those kinds of facilities that allow people of various disabilities, mobility disabilities primarily, to have the same ability to access getting on and off either the Coho or the Clipper, using the buildings in a way that any passenger would be able to do. There have been some retrofits that have been done to make, for example, the CP steamship terminal building accessible. There's an elevator system that was added to the building some years ago that provides some functionality there that is good for people with disabilities. But this is a chance with the new build not to have to do those kinds of expensive retrofits, which never quite satisfy say the current code requirements to get it right and built to the highest standard. I should also say too that in case we don't get to this, one of the things that's really important to Victorians is preserving views of our beautiful harbor. And this is going to be a very low density project. The James Bay Community Association, which typically has, fairly engaged and extensive views on lots of things that might happen in their community, understandably, was very involved way back in 1999 with the rezoning. And we've had I can remember in 2000, we had a bunch of high-powered architects, Bing Tom, for example, rest in peace, and Jack Diamond, who did the Toronto waterfront revitalization, and others, come to our city. And one of the things they told us is do not alienate the public from enjoying their waterfront or obscure their views. And so I think the way the buildings are going to be set out is going to preserve a maximum amount of connection to the water for people who aren't using the terminal, but are traversing that part of Victoria, and of course those who are using the terminal. So it's exciting to have those kinds of principles built into the zoning allowances.
And as we hear more and more about this, people, of course, we want to remind you that we're doing this with the minister because they want your input into this. They want to know what you think of the plan. So the website is where you can go to provide that. This also is going to have some bearing on the Washington State ferries when they return, the ones that run from Sydney. Tell me about how this kind of applies to that too.
Well, I think primarily it's around the threat of losing U.S. Customs and Border Services and that complement of officers that helps with the border crossing between Sydney and Anacortes. It's a great route. It is, Washington Ferries wants to bring it back in a really good way following COVID. They've had some service restrictions there for sure, but that's a fantastic connection again to Washington State that is quite integrated in terms of how the border services combine and deploy their officers to provide those services.
So, Minister Fleming, the final question, of course, the one that everybody was asking or wondering why I wasn't going to ask it at the very beginning: what's this going to cost, or what is the best estimate of what this is going to cost?
Well, we're thinking the range of costs is somewhere between $220 and $290 million. So we talked at the outset of the interview here about the economic benefits annually. So it's a pretty good ROI on that kind of expense. Some of that will include remediation costs and those sorts of things to get the site prepared for sure. Some of the costs will be around the staging of an operating port while it's undergoing extensive renovations. But we're hoping for a 50% contribution from the federal government. I mean, this is a border crossing. This is necessitated in part by agreements signed by the government of Canada with the United States. But it's also a tremendous economic opportunity for the government of Canada, just as it is for all of our municipal governments here in the province of BC. All orders of government will benefit from the taxes. Our communities will benefit from the jobs and the employment. And there will be so many economic development opportunities that come from a revitalized Belleville Terminal, new hotels, new restaurants, new accommodation that can be built or expanded. As I said, it doesn't come around very often, and we're really excited that it's here, and that's why we want to hear from people.
Yep, I do. So the website again it's been on screen, but it's engage.gov.bc.ca/Belleville Terminal. Go to that site. They want to hear from you. Minister Rob Fleming, thanks so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Bruce. Thanks for having me, and thank you for the Chamber's leadership on making this a key priority for our region.
Thank you. And that's it for today. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chats.